The issue of the oral law was one of the main hurdles I had to get over before being able to continue with an Orthodox conversion and honestly be able to identify with the historically Torah observant Jewish community at large. The main hurdle I had to get over was this idea that all of the oral laws and traditions and Talmudic discussions were given to Moses at Mount Sinai orally, and this was all memorized somehow, the gigantic Talmud, and only eventually written down. And that this includes all the debates, etc. This I just found unbelievable. So basically what helped me get over this hurdle was a certain website, don't recall exactly what it was, about maybe 8 years ago, that made a distinction between different types of oral law, and that was something new to me. So basically in this video I want to convey what these basic distinctions are. Try to keep it simple here. So there are 4 main types. The first 2 types are oral law that was given by Moses. The first of these types are oral law given by Moses that can be extrapolated from the text of the written Torah by means of 13 principles of logic, 13 principles of exegesis. An example of this is the type of fruit that we use in the different fruits that we praise the Almighty with on the Festival of Tabernacles. In the Torah it says, Pri Es Hador, the glorious tree. This is in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 40. Now, what type of fruit this wasn't disputed by the Mosaic Court, and it is the tradition that what fruit this is being referred to was given by Moses, and identification of this fruit can be made known, can be derived by means of those 13 principles of logic. So the second type of oral law given by Moses is called Halacho L'Moshe Sinai, practical application of a law given to Moses at Mount Sinai. This type of oral law is more, how do you say, vague in its you can't really derive it. That's the distinction. So this type of oral law, Halacho L'Moshe Sinai, is a type of law given by Moses which cannot be derived from the text of the Torah, from the text of the law of Moses, by means of the 13 principles of logic. However, this does not mean that these oral laws are totally independent from the text. Rather, the text itself calls for, demands that such an oral law exists without providing means by which it can be derived with the 13 principles of logic. So identification of these particular laws were given directly by Moses without the ability to be derived using those 13 principles. They were divinely revealed, and when you see the enormous number of these types of oral law, suddenly belief that this kind of law could have been given to Moses at Mount Sinai becomes much more believable. That enormous number, more or less 30 laws. Here they are. Here, here, and here. Suddenly, belief in the oral law being passed down and not codified in the text becomes much more believable. I'll give you a few examples of what these are. Knowledge of the exact measurement, certain measurements mentioned in the Torah, knowledge of what that measurement actually is. Let's see, what the minimum amount of certain foods are, what is the minimum amount of water that can be considered a mikvah, a certain type of water that's often referred to in the Torah. The certain parameters of tefillin, which are referred to in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Let's see. And there are a lot of laws that were passed down, like a good chunk of these oral laws, the Moshe Sinai, include regard tefillin. Yeah, you can see that this is demanded in Leviticus chapter 7 verse 12 with regard to the amount of oil that is to be mixed. So the other type of oral law, a third type, is not given by Moses at Mount Sinai or directly by him at all, but rather was derived by later generations of the Mosaic Court using the 13 principles of exegesis, of interpretation, deriving these laws from the text. And then the fourth type of law are laws and decrees by the Mosaic Court, which were enacted in fulfillment of the Torah commandment in Leviticus chapter 18 verse 20, where we are commanded to make safeguards for his safeguards. So that includes certain stringencies that the Mosaic Court erected and established to further distance us from violating Torah law. And that is in fulfillment of one of the Torah commandments. And then the last main type of oral law is not derived from the text, nor is it in fulfillment of distancing us from a particular transgression, but rather are certain laws that they enacted in order to strengthen our faith and observance of these laws according to what their knowledge and logic deemed necessary. Examples of these certain practices, you can find certain examples in the Tanakh, such as the fasts mentioned in Esther chapter 9 verse 31, Jeremiah 36 verse 9, Zechariah 8 verse 19. Certain practices referred to in Psalms, such as Psalm 55 verse 18, three main time periods of daily prayer. Anyway, yeah, and of course all these are in accordance with the way in which the Mosaic Court instructed us to heed. And they are not additions to the 613 commandments of the oral law. Not of the oral law. They're not violation, adding to or taking away of the 613 commandments based upon the text of the written law, because the text of the written law calls for all of these oral laws, and the 613 commandments themselves are inseparable from them. And the last type that I mentioned with regard to edicts and decrees that the Mosaic Court instituted to strengthen our faith, these types of laws can be abolished. They're not eternal like the 613. They can be abolished, changed, modified by future courts depending upon their discretion and according to other certain laws, like if they have a higher level of knowledge and wisdom and number than the previous court that enacted such and such practice. Hope this was of use, this video, and if you guys have any tips or anything that needs to be further clarified, please let me know. Maybe one day I'll do this in a much more professional and entertaining. That really shouldn't be the point.